as a parent wants their child to be the best product, they also want them to be the best human being. And
in fact, it at times takes the form of a family feud, which means that typically a father, when fighting with the mother, and the mother, when fighting with the father, would ask the children, am I not right? Is not your father doing a bad thing? And is not your mother? So you see, the children are in a fix.
Oh my God, you never leave me alone. You're just too harsh, you're too critical about me. Let me breathe. So this is what we are learning from the parents.
Then I think the best way forward is that a person immediately apologizes, says that, well, this is something that I should not have done. And apology in front of a child would actually elevate you. I think the best way to communicate here is to make your spouse understand that the best way to react is to give yourself time, in which our society is lagging behind, in which our grandparents, which at one time they did play a role, they no longer have this role somehow because of many other reasons.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem.
Alaikum assalam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine.
Okay, Dr. Saleem, there is a topic I really wanted to discuss with you. You see, as when we are young adults, and there is a lot of excitement in a particular topic of marriage around our friends and everywhere. And I have noticed in my circle and generally people around me that when they think about marriage, it's mostly about the fantasies, what they have seen in Hollywood and movies. And if we see any practicality in this department, the mothers are telling their daughters that how you have to walk and you have to move according to your husband and his needs, you have to make compromise. Then on the other hand, a husband, he is being told that you have to be serious, you cannot quit job, and you're entering into a serious situation. But there is one thing that is really being missed out in this all, and that is parenting. And if you see that the entire reason for the institution of marriage is solely about parenting, that you have to bring a human life into the world and you have to nourish it properly. And what it has been assumed, what I have seen in the society, that as soon as a girl will bear a child and hold it in her arms, she will naturally know how to become a mother. She knows everything instantly. Right. And this doesn't just feel fine, because you have your own mentality, you have your own traumas and everything. So I really wanted to know that, is it really so that we become naturally parents, or you have to do some homework beforehand?
Yes, Ayesha, this is indeed a very important and I think an equally challenging topic. Parenting, I think, is a skill. It's an art. But unfortunately, the way we go about it is more that we learn through it by experience. And normally what happens is that we experiment with the first child, and we make a lot of mistakes, and then maybe we are a little better regarding the second child, and maybe if we have a third child, we are much better in bringing the child up. And we are very good grandparents because of the fact that we have done all our mistakes and all our blemishes have finished until the time we have raised our own children. So I think that this is a very, very, not only a very important subject, it's also a very neglected subject. So as you rightly said, that people learn and from their own mistakes, but you see what happens is that it's not always very wise to learn from mistakes. It's much better that we avoid those mistakes. And I think the best way to do that is that parenting should be taught as a subject, as a skill to both the potential parents, the father and the mother, and they should be given tips that what exactly is the family institution. Of course, well before parenting is how the husband and the wife have to come together, they have to gel together, they have to give this impression that as a family, they're a well-knit unit. And there is nothing between the two which should in any way give the impression that the children who are going to be born in that family are going to face difference of opinion in a way that the father and the mother are always arguing with one another. They are at daggers drawn. So you see, the first and the basic thing is that fathers and mothers should realize that whatever difference of opinion they might have, and of course people have differences of opinion because this is quite natural, the only thing is that the manner in which this difference of opinion should come before a child should be in a very, very disciplined way, in which you, let the child know that yes, you might have a difference of opinion, but at the same time, this difference of opinion does not manifest itself in the form of a quarrel or an altercation. So I think the first point here is that as parents, they have to realize that come what may, any disagreement should not manifest itself in the form of bad behavior, of maybe abusing oneself or calling names, because this is something which happens. And of course, then there are other things as well. For example, the way you need to teach your child, the way you need to groom it as far as religion is concerned. And then, of course, going on from here, we have to understand that children, the way they are born and the way they are brought up by our society, they have a lot of external influence. Because you see, we are not living in a society which is purely a society in which there are no joint families. So more often than not, we are living in joint family societies. And so the father and the mother are not the only parents. So we have extended parentage. Like, for example, the uncles and the aunts, they also step in as parents. So all these things have to be taken into account. And I think the first thing that I would suggest our young parents is that as the first step, of course, there are a number of suggestions that can be given, but as a first step, they have to appear as a well-knit unit in which they must always have a conflict resolution strategy amongst themselves, so that if there is a difference of opinion, they can have it resolved. And when they come before their children, it should not be in any way that the children get this feeling that there is always a fight going on. I remember once that I was counseling a young child and his sister. They were about 12 or 13 years of age, and we were having a very informal chat. And suddenly we were talking about marriage. I mean, of course, these were very small kids, and both children unanimously said, "We are not going to marry." And I said, "Why?" I mean, of course, it's understandable that at this time we're not going to marry, but why not later on? And after a bit more conversation, I got to realize and understand that the parents of these two children were constantly fighting with one another, constantly bickering and constantly, just having those quarrels. So this had a toll on their psyche. This made them realize that, marriage is not a good institution. So I think here we have to, first of all, as they say, that we must convert a house into a home. It should be a homely atmosphere in which the children feel welcome and the children feel that they can learn from their parents, and their parents are, of course, individuals who can speak to them and talk to them, and in a respectful way. I mean, you can always have a difference of opinion, but that difference of opinion should not in any way manifest itself in the form of bad language or abusive language, which is quite a lot the case, I would say. So this is my first point, but as we go along in our conversation, I have some more suggestions as well.
So this is really interesting because it is very common, especially in our traditional or Desi households, that parents are fighting with one another in front of the younger children, and they are not even bothering that this can have any negative impact on their minds. And they're like, well, if we won't fight with one another in our homes, then what? It's a natural thing. So this is really true. Now I will
let me add one more point. I mean, it's not just a quarrel that remains between the children or between the parents. In fact, it at times takes the form of a family feud, which means that typically a father, when fighting with the mother, and the mother, when fighting with the father, would ask the children, "Am I not right? Is not your father doing a bad thing? And is he not your mother?" So you see, the children are in a fix because they cannot take sides, and if they take sides, how can they even face the other parent? So you see, instead of realizing not only that they must not indulge in any fight, this one step ahead in which the whole family gets involved, this makes matters even more complicated. It has a very bad psychological impact on the children, and it actually is something that we don't realize, that as parents, our biggest investment, in my understanding, our biggest investment is our children. Their well-being, and first of all, their mental well-being, their psychological well-being. And if that well-being is not taken care of in any way, then we have not understood the basic meaning of marriage.
Yes, I fully agree with you. But Dr. Saleem, there is also another thing. As for example, this can be somewhat implemented in families who are a bit privileged in economical class and everything. But there are also some poor families. There are some families in which the entire family just settled in one room, parents and children. Now, it means that they are not having good monetary status. It means they have a lot of troubles and everything, bills and all those troubles. And this also shows that if they are from such a background, they might not be too much educated in this department about their mental well-being. Now, there are shortage of so many things. In the same room are their children, in the same room are their parents. And now if they have to quarrel, they will naturally quarrel in front of one another. And then the children will again be there.
Right.
There will be a family feud. So what can those parents do?
Well, actually, this is a very specific area in which parenting, of course, gets compromised. Not only parenting, but a lot of other things get compromised when you're living in a single room. But I guess the most important thing here is that, as I said, if the parents, if the husband and wife, they have a conflict resolution strategy right at the start of their marriage. You see, parenting starts with this union of the husband and the wife. And a husband and wife, whether the children are born as yet or not, they need to be very mutually agreeable to one another, amicable to one another. And for that, they, on day one, I would say, even before that, if they get in touch with another, there has to be some conflict resolution strategy worked out between them. For example, the husband and the wife should say to each other that whenever there's a difference of opinion or a conflict, or if someone gets angry, what should be the way forward? Should we just leave it to the circumstances? Should we just get angry? Should we just go our own ways? So I think it goes a bit more deep, in which at the time of marriage, such things have to be settled. For example, I mean, even in the case of a single house family, this could be I would say, an alternative strategy in which you think about the fact that, well, we will go out of the house, or we will control ourselves, and today, because we still have phones, we will write our grievances to one another. We will control on WhatsApp, and we'll just let ourselves know. And also, I think the best way to communicate here is to make your spouse understand that the best way to react is to give yourself time. So the more time you give yourself, the more that reaction will be controlled, the more that reaction would be more cogent. So these are some of the tips which elderly people, they give to their children when they marry them off. But unfortunately, again, this also is something in which our society is lagging behind, in which our grandparents, which at one time they did play a role, they no longer have this role somehow because of many other reasons. So I think that is why I normally suggest, and I have said it at a number of occasions, that parenting should be taught as a subject at the high school level maybe, or at the college level. So, I mean, people who have gone through this subject, they will be aware of all these things. And obviously, people who have not studied this subject, or, I mean, in any way, they have not attended school, then, I mean, this is something that will be a problematic issue all the time, and not only just for parenting, for a host of other things. So we don't have a complete solution for a single room family, because you see, in that case, matters are complicated. But I think if we look at this whole subject in a way that we come to realize that in normal families where you are still able to communicate to one another and make this thing work, it is something that you have to make your spouse realize that, well, I am your well-wisher, I am someone you can fall back upon, I am your friend, I am your confidant. And yes, we can still have a fight, we can still have an argument, but at the end of the day, let's wipe out our differences, start afresh. And the best way would be to just let the other person know where he or she went wrong, and where I would have liked the other person to have behaved in a different way.
I would like to add on to this that conflict doesn't always have to be negative. It doesn't have to be disastrous. The way how we handle conflict, it sets a great tone. That I think what a couple can do is we can set boundaries and learn how to respect. In boundaries, I've usually talked to different people, and they think that setting boundaries is equal to controlling others. But maybe it is to understand that if you react this way, if you're going to be sarcastic, abusive, or harsh, I might leave the conversation for some time, and then we can have it again. And maybe, as you said, to set the tone of the conversation, of the conflict in such a way that you don't have to go towards all that harshness and negativity and make it a big thing. Now, being an unmarried person, being a child, I think it will be really easy for me to pinpoint out that this is the mistake, you should do like this, you should do like that. So instead of this, I would like to put some things in front of you as an experiment, as a child, that when parents, they use different methodologies on us for our betterment, how does it affect us? Now, first of all, which thing I would like to discuss is role model, parents as role model. As a parent wants their child to be the best product, they also want them to be the best human being. And for example, the greatest thing we find is truthfulness. Every parent wants their child to be truthful. But I have seen so many households, or the majority of, in which parents or mothers are lying in front of the child, to their fathers, to their aunts, to their mother-in-law. But they're saying to their child that say the truth. And the same lying mothers are then scolding their child, their sons or their daughters, if they tell a lie. So this is, we do not see this thing in parenting, that become what you want your child to be. Show them that, look, I am this manifestation. As when I and my brothers, we were really young. It was our parents. They decided to show us that what is truthfulness. So I remember I was not an easygoing child, and when I would be sick and my mom had to give me medicine, she would never say water. She would say, this is medicine, it's going to be bitter, and after this I'm going to give you something sweet. And my cousin was a few months older than me, and I distinctly remember her mother would feed her medicine and say, this is water. And my mother would never do it, knowing that how much hard time it would give. And now when I look at different people, I see that I'm confident. I try my best that yes, I can be truthful, because I have seen that my mother has been doing it, my father has been doing it. And then the second thing in being the role model, which I find in the parents, is, for example, they're saying to their children, you have to say the truth. But how are they implementing this? Maybe when they're truthful. I've seen some parents that when their children are really small, as 1-year-old, 2-year-olds, they give them leverage for doing everything. As for example, if I went somewhere and that there was a little boy, and 1 or 2 years old, he had a fight with my younger brother. And I goes to his mom and says, Mom, he punched me and he beaten me and he abused me and said me words. Now everyone knows that my sibling, my brother, he will not say cold words, or he would not abuse. So his mother knew he's lying, but she's like, oh my God, sweetheart, what did he say next? Oh, and she was smiling and she was loving him, and she was saying, look how creative my son is. Now when the same son, after 2 years, now he will tell a lie. She will retaliate. She will be angry. But if you come in place of that little boy, he knows that if I'm going to tell a lie, I'm going to make stuff up, my mom is going to be proud. So if you're being proud now, why will you be mad at me afterwards? So what would you like to say on this?
Nothing except the fact that, you see, the mothers, they need to know that they are the first seat of learning. And not only the mothers, the fathers as well, and even the elder siblings. So as the first seat of learning, the child is like a parrot. He is going to copy you, he's going to walk like you, he's going to talk like you, he's going to eat like you, and he's going to speak like you. So whatever you speak is going to be something that he's going to copy. And as earlier on, of course, it would be an involuntary thing, and later on it would become a voluntary thing, because now he would start to understand. So I think that the age-old saying and the age-old adage that practice what you preach is something that the parents must always, keep themselves abreast of. And at the same time, you see, as human beings, we can always make faults, we can always make errors. So they have to conform to the standard. They must preach what they practice, and they must practice what they preach. But what happens is, if there is some mistake, for example, if there is some deviation, then I think the best way forward is that a person immediately apologizes, says that, well, this is something that I should not have done. And apology in front of a child would actually elevate you. It's not going to, let you down in any way. You have to realize that at times, as human beings, we make mistakes. So if we have made a mistake by maybe not speaking the truth, maybe exaggerating, maybe understating, and for example, if a child comes up, because children have this boldness as well, they would come to you and say that, well, Baba, what did you say? You were acting like this, but the truth is something different. So I think in such a case, you have to be a seeker of the truth and confess anything that you've done wrong. And that is the only way forward. So normally this does not happen. So parents try to cover up. They try to make excuses. And this is where they go wrong. So I think we have to understand that parenting cannot be compartmentalized. What you are, what you are. Yes. If you are a truthful person, it's not just going to manifest before your children. It's like a way of life that's going to manifest before other people as well. So as a way of life, as a practice, as a as a habit, that has to be developed separately. And another thing that I would like to say here is that there is this, just as parenting is an art, the corrective part, how to correct your children, that's also an art. So the art of correction. So where do you need to stop them? Where do you need to scold them? Where do you need to give them that leverage? Where do you need to make them realize that, well, faults are something that all of us commit. So don't need to worry about it. Let's start again. And instead of punishing them, instead of maybe calling them by names, similarly, repetitively you ask your child not to do something bad. So remember that human psyche needs some time to recover when something goes wrong. So scolding your child right at the time he's making that mistake is not the right thing. Yes. Let him or her make the mistake, and maybe later on you can make that person realize that mistakes are part of our life. It is not the mistake which counts as much as our attitude after the mistake. So if this is something that you're able to inculcate in your child by example, then I think that you will be dealing at a human plane. So what happens is, in normal circumstances, the parents place themselves at a bigger pedestal by making the child realize that I cannot make a mistake. Yes. So they have to realize that as human beings, this is something that's going to come naturally to them. And if something goes wrong, if something is not the right thing, then you just need to apologize and say sorry and just move on from there.
Yes. And as you said, that children learn and imitate from their parents. So just like that, we have to learn that if we make a mistake, how am I going to react? So when we go to our parents and we say that, Baba or Mom, you made this mistake, and either they will be like, I didn't do that, or they would get harsh to try to conceal what they have done wrong. Then they would expect their child that when they come and say that you made this mistake, so we should say that, oh, I'm sorry, I made this mistake and I'll try to be better. The children are doing exactly the same thing. Either they lie or they just get stubborn that, why are you doing this? Oh my God, you never leave me alone. You're just too harsh, you're too critical about me. Let me breathe. So this is what we are learning from the parents. And again, whatever they do, whatever you people are doing, it's for our good. But sometimes we mean good, but our actions are too destructive for the other. Now, bringing the point forth in which you said that are to correct the child. This I have noticed is again something really lacking. First, I will start from the example number 2. I have seen that parents are scolding their children in a mob. Now, being human, everyone is having their own self-esteem and Correct. Ego and dignity. So now, inshallah, in the next program, I would really like to talk to you about this, that how the art of correction impacts a child, forms their personality, and as well as their subconscious. Thank you so much for today.
My pleasure.